What's up, guys? In this video, we are going to be going over number 24 from the math test in test 1 in your red book. So take a second, pause the video, read number 24, and think about how you might use your word problem strategy to solve it. Now I know what you're thinking. Not only is this a word problem, this is a long word problem, and it's not even really a math problem per se. It's not even really a math question. So we gotta think about this one in sort of a different way. This question depends on how much you've been exposed to statistics. It uses some statistics lingo that we gotta navigate, but we're still gonna approach this like we would approach any other word problem. So if you read through this, you'll notice, if you look at question 1 of your word problem strategy, what am I trying to find? It says something like, which phrase best describes this type of testing, or something like that. So we want to know, we're trying to find the type of test that was used by this medicine company, by this drug company. Step 2, what do we know, okay? We know that there were 300 total participants in this trial, in this study, or whatever it was. We know that of this 300, 150 people received medication, and 150 received a placebo. Okay? Now, we also know that the way that they assigned who got the medication and who received the placebo was by running a computer program where they simulated giving people different like markers that say they're going to get medication versus a placebo. This whole weird system, but if you really dig down to the core of it, you'll realize that the way they determined who get the meds and who gets the placebo was totally random. There was no outside forces. This computer randomly distributed numbers to people, and those numbers determined whether or not they got the meds versus the placebo. So we could say that the medication versus the placebo were chosen without bias, right? There was no bias involved in the distribution of the medications and the placebos. Totally random, right? No bias means it's random. Now, we also know, if you notice, the group that received the placebo, if you think about this in terms of like an experiment, they are the control group, right? They are the control. They are the ones that are not receiving the medication. Now the ones that did receive the medication, those are not the control group. That is the experimental group. That's the experimental group. So we have a control and an experimental group, meaning that this is an experiment. This meets the requirements of an experiment. So it's a random experiment because there was no bias in the way that the control and the experimental substance were distributed. And it's an experiment because there was a control and an experimental group. So this was if we put it all together now, random experiment.